Carly Fiorina, let's talk about her a little bit.
Former tech CEO.
Former CEO of Hewlett-Packard.
First woman to lead a Fortune 20 company.
2016 GOP presidential candidate Carly Fiorina.
Republican Party leader has been traveling the country.
There are big fans of hers out there.
She's the MIC. She's the most improved candidate of this cycle so far.
Surging in the polls as a result of a rock star performance at the first GOP debate in early August.
Might she be the right candidate for the Republicans?
Let's talk about the Bay Area. Cool spot this morning in the north was Sonoma. Anywhere from 56 to 58 in the north and the southeast, and the San Francisco-Oakland complex about 58 degrees.
Carly Fiorina, the CEO, president, and chair of Hewlett-Packard, the Silicon Valley superstar.
Put yourself in the position of the CEO.
Carly Fiorina deciding to go after Compaq. That was a very controversial strategy. We're going to be number one.
At the next board meeting, Carly says she intended to clear the air and move forward.
Sometimes the people with the harshest critics are people that are being the boldest about change and trying to accomplish really positive good things.
So she drew a line. Not only did she act, but she insisted upon being fired rather than some sort of wishy-washy resignation over a period of time or something. She was angry, and she had every reason to be angry.
And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. You gotta act. If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far.
Let me tell you about Carly Fiorina.
You're drawn even closer by what you can tell is her honesty.
She worked her way up. She became a head of a significant international company, HP.
Everyone told her it couldn't be done, but yet that didn't deter her in any way, shape, or form.
Real roll-up-your-sleeves kind of person. And that ends up meaning a lot. She's
been a huge part of my life since, like I said, since I was like 10 or 11.
Carly is almost indefatigable. She absorbs the blows, of which there were many.
A cancer survivor. She went through 11 operations, extensive chemotherapy, radiation.
The job needs to be done. You call her, it'll get done.
Tremendous integrity, a strong point of view.
She is dealing with problems facing people, and I think that really resonates.
Carly's the most generous person I've seen on all levels. She does a lot more than write a check. She gives of her time.
She often tells the story about her mother being a Sunday school teacher. I can relate to that.
Even if she's had obstacles in her pathway, she has gone around them.
I was struck by her intensity to listen to other people.
Oh, she's enormously compassionate. She's a gigantic heart.
I know that she's pro-life. She believes in her core.
She says what she feels, not what other people think that she should say.
And she's also a wonderful human being.
Her journey from where she started to where she ended up, it's a classic American story of someone that just worked hard, applied themselves, high integrity, doing what's right, standing up for the little people.
As my mother said to me when I was a little girl, what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God. I didn't feel very gifted for a long time in my life. It was a challenge. You have gifts, you have to find them, you have to use them.
Those who have risen to some of the greatest challenges sometimes come from the most unlikely places. There once was a humble, curious little girl from Texas who went on to become the most powerful woman at one of the biggest companies in the world, and then ran for President of the United States.
I was born in Texas. My mother grew up really quite poor. Her mother died when she was very young. Her dad was an assembly worker for the Ford Motor Company in Rossford, Ohio. My father was a professor. I would sit with him and watch the news. And he would get all mad at the TV, and he would argue with Walter Cronkite. And so I just grew up sort of listening to all this.
And that's the way it is.
He'd been a Democrat until FDR. And then during FDR, he just decided that the government was taking over everything. And he became a Republican and a conservative. I have been a conservative, actually, all my life. And I'm sure that came from listening to my dad, but I think it also came from the values I learned growing up. My dad, who was a law professor, was working his way up in the academic world and went to wonderful universities and taught there. We moved when I was about 2 to Ithaca, New York. And then we moved again to Connecticut. And then we moved again to California. Then we moved to London. And then, of course, I remember landing in the airport in Accra in the late 60s. I was 14. And here we were, this little family of 5. I remember my father, he was teaching the new Ghanaian Constitution. And so we would have these Ghanaian law students come to our house for dinners. And my sister and my brother and I would sit and I would listen to these people talk about their hopes for their country, and you couldn't help but be impacted by that. We all hold so much in common as human beings. Mothers fuss over their children the same way. People connect and laugh over the same kind of things, no matter where you are in the world.
Carly eventually landed at Stanford University.
When I went to Stanford, this great professor got me interested in medieval philosophy. Throughout history, work brings dignity to people's lives. Family brings purpose to their lives. Faith brings meaning to their lives. It's true now. It was true 2,000 years ago, too.
If you know anything about Carly, you know she was a medieval history major and went to business school. She decided that probably wasn't the best degree to get a job.
I know what it feels like to be at the bottom of the totem pole.
After earning a degree from Stanford, some would have scoffed at an entry-level job at a small business. Not Carly.
I started my business career as a secretary for a little 9-person real estate firm. That was my first introduction to business, really, other than the fact that I had worked as a Kelly girl to help put myself through college. Eventually, I went on and got an MBA, ran away to Italy first to teach English for a year. My parents were quite concerned by then. I get an MBA, and I go to work for AT&T. I'm one of a million, and I am put into sales training.
So reach out and touch someone.
I never had a plan to become a CEO. I didn't really have a plan to rise in the business. For the first several years I was in the business, I was just trying to do a good job.
Many of our
AT&T had hundreds of thousands of employees, but Carly quickly stood out from the crowd.
We must help each other. We must support each other to be successful.
I've never liked the term glass ceiling because to me it implies that there's this invisible barrier. You don't know it's there, but one of these days you're going to hit it, and then that's it. You can't do anymore. Yes, there are hurdles. Yes, there are barriers. Lots of people have hurdles and barriers, not just women.
Carly's life was about to take a sharp turn. Not even the savviest executive can predict matters of the heart.
I was sitting in my boss's cubicle. And he was at his desk, I was sitting in the corner, and Frank and his boss walked by, and they all introduced themselves. And I thought, wow, what a cute guy.
Of course, it was obvious she wanted me to ask her out.
Frank Fiorina, once a Pittsburgh tow truck driver, had risen through the ranks of AT&T, a self-described gearhead. Carly had fallen for Frank's big Italian heart, but she was unprepared for his big Italian family.
It's controlled pandemonium at all times. There's food everywhere.
I got chocolate licorice, and I put it in your mouth. That's how you learn to crawl.
It's great fun.
Multiple desserts, all homemade.
So when we come together, it is almost like my fat Greek wedding. You know, everybody loves everybody, and then they're arguing about certain things.
I drilled it this way, all the dirt came down on my face.
I mean, look, after 30 years of marriage, I still can't do meatballs the way his mother does. He reminds me of that every time I try.
Carly is an excellent cook. She's like magic, nothing plain. It's all really detailed. We're gonna eat.
He brings me home for the first time. I walk in the front door, and that was it. I mean, it was just, he loves you, your family. That's it.
Frank's family welcomed Carly with open arms, but no one was sure how Frank's 2 precocious daughters would take to Carly.
Everyone has seen these Disney movies with the single father and the little girls that would play havoc with their dates that they would bring home. That epitomized my two little girls.
Frank's daughter, Tracy Tribby, now a wife and mother herself, remembers the chaos well.
Yeah, I guess when you're 10 and 11, if you don't like somebody, you just, you let them know right away. You don't kind of sugarcoat it. You just kind of ignore them, or you just kind of make their life miserable. So probably did that a lot.
The stuff they did to girls that I would bring to meet them was shameful. They never did that to Carly.
I could not love them any better if I had borne them myself. But they have truly been blessings in my life.
She would sit on the floor with us, she would play games. It wasn't all about him. In fact, probably the other way around.
Two things I had when my wife left me was a motorcycle and this little boat. Carly would go away for a weekend on the motorcycle with me on poker runs. And then I knew I really met the woman of my dreams.
He was a bad boy.
I was a lot lighter.
It was fun. It was great fun. I mean, I'm on the back of a motorcycle with this wonderful, handsome man, and we had a lot of fun.
I drove a tow truck, putting myself through school. I fixed televisions, putting myself through school. Played in a rock and roll band. That's how I lost my hearing.
But underneath all that macho motorcycle, car, boat is and was a very sweet man who appreciated everything about me, including my brain, and that meant a lot to me as a young woman coming up in a man's world.
I used to have a little 16-foot runabout boat, and the four of us would literally, when we had a weekend off, we would spend a whole weekend on it. Carly and Lori would sleep on the floor of that boat, and Tracy and I would fold down two little seats and sleep on them, and it was quite wonderful.
We would eat peanut butter sandwiches and swim, and that's how I learned how to water ski, and we would spend all night on the boat. And several times, the boat would break loose. We'd wake up in the middle of the lake, and they were great times, simple times.
One time we drifted 5 miles. All night long she kept telling me, we're moving. I kept saying, go to sleep.
We were moving.
5 miles. I wasn't sure where we were when I woke up.
Carly adored Frank's children, embracing them as her own. The couple had hoped to add more to the family, but time was catching up to them.
There was a group of 6 or 8 of us that had gone out to dinner and were having a lovely time. We went to the bathroom, as women need to do together, apparently. And I found her there sobbing. And I said, Carly, what is the matter? And she was sobbing because I think it had hit her on her 40th birthday that it was not going to be in God's plan for her and Frank to have children of their own. When their first grandchild was born, she was named Kara. Carly called me so excited to tell me about this new grandchild, and she says, Carol, they've named her Kara. Do you think it's after me? I said, of course she's named after you.
Grandma, smile.
Carly finally found the love of her life and a new family. While her fortunes continued to rise at AT&T.
If something looked challenging, it was interesting to me. I found I would run to problems. If there was a problem, that's where I wanted to be.
Her star was rising fast. So fast, she was admitted to MIT's prestigious Sloan Fellowship program. Many of the world's visionary leaders had passed through these doors. And now, so would Carly.
We met in the ladies' room. We were both entering MIT, the Sloan program. I was not a math whiz, and you can imagine at MIT, it's pretty quantitative. And Carly was not just the smartest woman in the class, she was the smartest person in the class. And so we helped each other. She wanted to be more in the operations end of things after she came out of MIT. And I think that set her on a course, truly, to be a broader, experienced executive.
She was an executive to watch.
Kathy Fitzgerald worked with Carly at AT&T, and right away she saw something special.
When she went out on the road show to sell our stock, I remember sitting next to an analyst who said, my God, she could be a CEO. And of course she could be a CEO.
Well, she completely changed things around.
Bill Roebuck was at AT&T International when Carly was named VP of Worldwide Strategy and Business Development.
It became the sales teams who decided what to fund, as opposed to the former structure where we had product houses. They built a product, and then the salespeople got to go try peddle it. Carly's view was, no, the sales organization will control the R&D budget. Can you imagine how radical a change that was in a company that had a 75 or 80-year history of doing it one way?
Carly was selected to lead the IPO when AT&T spun off its telecommunications equipment business into a new company. The result was Lucent Technologies, the largest IPO in U.S. history at the time. By the end of 1996, the stock has skyrocketed 92%. Carly presided over Lucent's global service provider business. Annual revenues climbed to $20 billion. It became the largest and fastest growing business at Lucent. Fortune magazine named Carly the most powerful woman in business.
Ranked numero uno is Carly Fiorina, Group President of Lucent Technologies Global Service Provider Business. Well, Carly ran the most successful and largest IPO public offering in history.
She would remain on Fortune's list for the next 6 years, straight into her biggest challenge yet.
I got a call Friday night after the markets closed, and she said, Carol, I've been given the opportunity to be chairman of HP.
And this year, a new star, Carly Fiorina, the new CEO of Hewlett-Packard, the computer giant that experts say relies too much on yesterday, not enough on tomorrow.
Hewlett-Packard was known then as the gray lady of Silicon Valley. And what was implied by that phrase was she's past her prime.
In 1998, Hewlett-Packard had fallen short of profit expectations for 9 quarters in a row. The company lagged in almost every market category. Carly would step aboard to right the ship, leading 150,000 employees and operations in over 150 countries.
It pretty soon became very clear that this was a company that, despite its storied history, was in real trouble.
Fiorina had a big reputation as a marketing genius and decisive risk-taker at AT&T. That made her the top choice to command a high-tech turnaround.
Hewlett-Packard had started in a garage, so it was a very entrepreneurial, innovative, inventive company. The founders were, of course, legends, and they had built their company in a certain way. Every time someone would suggest a new approach to an old problem that hadn't been solved, people would say, well, that's not how we do it here. It's not the HP way.
Carly was brought on board to reinvent the struggling tech giant, and she wasted no time, laying the foundation for a merger with computer giant Compaq. Tom Perkins was on the board of Compaq.
And in 2000, Carly and the HP board decided to see if Compaq could be acquired and merged with Hewlett-Packard. There were a lot of very good reasons for that.
Of course, the Compaq merger became controversial initially because not everybody saw what we knew was happening in the industry. People didn't understand the industry had to consolidate, but it did, and it has.
The Compaq board approved it, the HP board approved it, but then the founders' families of HP didn't like it, and there was a very tough proxy war which took place. Carly did a superb job in convincing the shareholders to approve the deal.
This is a massive integration effort. One could argue it is the largest integration effort in the technology industry.
The deal went through. It was the most successful and largest high-tech merger ever, and it made Hewlett-Packard now the #1 computer company in the world.
The merger with Compaq was the best strategic option for us. It wasn't surprising to me that not everybody could see that. It wasn't their job to see it. It was my job to see it.
And we're trying to integrate in a very difficult overall environment.
I didn't know this when I took the job, but I came in at the peak of the dot-com boom. And a year later, we were about to go into the valley of the dot-com bust. No one knew that.
They still are very strong in their markets, and they have excellent customer relationships. It was the right thing to do, and only Carly Fiorina could have carried it off so successfully.
Carly bet big, and she won. Under Carly's leadership, HP went from a market laggard to a market leader.
A lot of managers say, well, what we need to do is pop the stock. And the truth is, the easiest thing in the world is to maximize short-term profitability. It doesn't take leadership. And so a leader's job is to focus on the long term.
HP board member Bob Knowling recalls the high stakes for the company.
I joined the HP board after Carly was brought in as CEO. HP, while very strong in the printer business, was lagging behind in software as it relates to IBM. Cisco at the time was buying a company a week maybe, and at one point became the most valuable company on the planet. And so her task was to come in and take a great company and to bridge that gap.
Under Carly, innovation tripled. HP was churning out 15 patents a day. Growth quadrupled from 1.2% to 6.5%. Revenues doubled to more than $80 billion. HP was now the 11th largest corporation in the United States.
Look at the record in terms of the performance. She doubled the size of the company. She was very good at making tough calls, and she made some big bets.
The economist Thomas Friedman wrote that under Carly, HP has gone from a company that had 87 different supply chains, each managed vertically and independently, with its own hierarchy of managers and back-office support, to a company with just 5 supply chains that manage $50 billion in business. But with change, often comes resistance.
If you look at the data, there had not been a cloud in the sky as it relates to her, the company, and the board. Then out of the blue, we get this tumultuous event that she's asked to leave the company. And if you just look at the data, she performed and she did the job she was asked to do.
From day one, the HP board has been, I would say, weak and controversial. It has a long, troubled history. It has been called the worst board in corporate America.
Tom Perkins joined the HP board after the successful Compaq merger. He describes a boardroom that was, among other things, attempting to force Carly's hand in the structure and management of HP.
The board's responsibility is fiduciary oversight. That does not include deciding who gets what chair on the team.
She basically drew a line in the sand, saying, look, if you force me or try to force me to put these people that I don't think are adequate into the positions, I won't do it, and I will resign. So she drew a line, the board continued to push, and it came to a showdown.
I had a conference call with my board, and I said, somebody in this board, and it has to be at least 2 people, because it's a source story, somebody's talking to the Wall Street Journal. And that is a violation of our fiduciary duty. Does anybody want to say anything?
The board was misbehaving. The board was leaking to the press, which just infuriated Carly, correctly.
There's some things that I do believe that the record is wrong. There were things done in that boardroom that undermined the authority and the integrity of the CEO.
So these 2 board members were feeling a lot of pressure, I presume, about their position. And so they started a conversation with other board members. And basically, I think in their view, it was their job or my job.
Carly was quite firm with me. She said that if she permitted the board to do what the board wanted to do, she would essentially lose control of the company, and she would no longer be able to be an effective CEO. It was simply a matter of high principle.
I had decided sort of midway through that period that I wasn't going to fight for my job, that I wasn't going to vote to save my job, that they were going to have to work this through. I thought that was best for the institution.
Carly stood her ground in the firing line for the interests of HP, and the rest played out in newspapers and the media.
At the next board meeting, Carly says she intended to clear the air and move forward. But when she showed up, she was fired, effective immediately.
It came to a showdown where essentially the board said our way or no way. And Carly opposed that and took the position, this is not what the board should be doing. You've given me the option to gracefully resign from this situation. I'm not going to do it. This point is too important. I demand to be fired.
And it was a very short conversation where I told her the decision of the board, and then I apologized to her. I told her I'm very sorry, and I was very sorry, not just for her, but for HP.
I went with the majority. I'm now somewhat ashamed to say, but it happened. The fundamental problem at HP was not Carly, but the board itself.
She has tremendous integrity, a strong point of view. I admired how she handled herself. I admired her tenure there. I thought she did the job she was hired to do. And no, I don't think that that was a justifiable firing.
Carly Fiorina, the CEO, president, and chair of Hewlett-Packard, was a Silicon Valley superstar, and the HP board ousted her yesterday after nearly 6 years on the job.
They really talk about how she was booted out. No, let's call it what it was. It was a board dysfunctional coup d'etat, whatever you want to call it. So that part is wrong.
And when you look back on it, Carly served as CEO of a giant company longer than most do. And I think she can take huge, huge credit for the success of Hewlett-Packard.
One of the first to reach out to Carly was another CEO who had been fired, Steve Jobs.
A couple phone calls stand out in my mind. One was from Steve Jobs, who had become a friend of mine. We went to each other for advice over the years on a variety of things. So he called, and first he was very angry, which of course warmed my heart. He said, they're gonna regret this. This is the stupidest thing they've ever done. They're gonna ask you back. I mean, he was really furious. He said, don't do anything for 6 months. Just let this settle. He said, you're gonna be inundated by people who want you to do things. Just pause and let it settle. It was really good advice.
Carly turned down countless interview and speaking requests, all but one, North Carolina A&T, an historically all-black college in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Sometimes there are consequences to not selling your soul. Sometimes there are consequences to staying true to what you believe, and sometimes those consequences are very difficult. But as long as you understand the consequences and accept the consequences, you are not only stronger as a result, you are more at peace.
Choose your life, choose to use your gifts, choose to define your own path, and don't sell your soul along the way. That was my message to those students that day.
Carly set her sights on what was next. Her niece, Shelley Roslin, describes her no-nonsense mindset.
You just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get your resume together, go shopping, get a suit, and you get back out there, right? And you just keep going.
Keep going, she did. The National Review wrote, during the Bush presidency, Fiorina would go on to walk the corridors of the CIA and other high offices of government, helping streamline America's national security apparatus. And she was starting to catch the eye of political party leaders.
Leading up to the 2010 elections, Republican leaders in California reached out to Carly, really interested in her visibility, her intelligence, her business experience, her ability to communicate and connect.
It wasn't long before Carly was preparing to run against Barbara Boxer for the United States Senate.
Frank and I were planning to go to the California Republican Convention, and I was going to make an announcement.
First, Carly needed to make a stop at her doctor's office. Little did anyone know it would bring her world crashing down.
I had found a lump myself several weeks earlier. I'd had a clear mammogram, so my doctor wasn't particularly concerned, but she'd said, oh, we'll just do a quick biopsy. And when you come in for your physical, I'll have the results by then. And so I show up at my doctor's office and, I'm in task mode and we're gonna get this done and move on. And she is very late, which is not like her. And she finally comes in, very pale, and sits down in a chair and says, "You have cancer. I don't know what kind. We have to begin tests immediately." Just like that.
Republicans from across California gathered today in Sacramento for the first state GOP convention since November. No doubt they'll be talking about the elections coming up.
The buzz in Sacramento was about Carly Fiorina, finally a formidable challenger to Senator Barbara Boxer. But unfolding that very moment, Carly was facing a challenge far greater.
I needed someone to talk to before I go home and tell my husband I have cancer, I don't know what kind. I called Deborah, who was going to be joining us, and I said, "Deborah, I have cancer. What should I do?"
I expressed how sincerely sorry I was. And I'm a practical person, so I said, "You got two choices. You and Frank can stay home and wring your hands and be upset, and as you should be, or you can get in the car and we can all go." And I said, "Honestly, it'll be a great distraction if you emotionally can do it."
Carly soldiered on, traveling that very day to the gathering crowd in Sacramento.
And so I decided I just couldn't sit there with nothing to do but worry for 48 hours. But now I couldn't tell people I was running for the Senate because all of a sudden I didn't know what I was doing.
Carly's battle for the U.S. Senate had been replaced with a battle for survival, and the task was just beginning. Carly's doctors at Stanford Hospital knew, with an advanced stage of cancer, treatment required swift, aggressive action.
I never felt alone. I never felt panicky. I never felt hopeless. I really didn't. And I didn't feel that way because of my faith. I knew I wasn't alone. And because of my family.
My dad was with her and he took care of her, took her to all of her appointments, sat there with her. He definitely was there for her.
Frank was always there. Gosh, he made 1 million grilled cheese sandwiches, because sometimes that's all I could eat. He would go make grilled cheese sandwiches.
Carly was taking time day by day, but the fast-paced world of politics waits for no one and under no circumstances.
She really had to make a decision, do I go forward?
Despite her unfolding battle with cancer, Carly decided to move forward with the run for Senate, worrying friends and loved ones who knew her all too well.
It's not Carly to sit home and just recuperate.
Well, she's making a run for the Senate seat currently held by Barbara Boxer in California, but that's nothing compared to going through chemotherapy. Carly Fiorina joins us.
Earlier this year, just 2 weeks after a clear mammogram, I discovered a lump.
In 2009, Carly's breast cancer diagnosis wasn't the worst news she would receive. Frank and Carly's daughter, Lori, was fighting a battle of her own.
There came a point in Lori's life where it was clear her life was falling apart. She was falling apart.
She drank more and more and more until it affected her work. When she ultimately lost her job over it, and that's when we really knew there was a problem.
You can get someone into treatment, but ultimately they have to decide to save themselves. But as parents, you desperately want to save your child.
We were all trying to help her get better, and she was in and out of rehab, and you just never knew when you were going to get that phone call that she was in the hospital or that she needed help, and so everybody was kind of on call all the time. And
she had come toward the end of her chemo treatment, which had kept her largely in California. We'd had lunch, and she said to me, you know, I'm just beginning to feel like myself again. And that very night, I believe they got a call.
In October 2009, Lori-Ann Fiorina became one of the over 100 Americans to die daily of drug addiction and abuse. Carly and Frank suffered a tragic loss. And through it all, Carly discovered new meaning from a higher source.
I think in the end, she would not give up the substances she craved. Grace has to save you, truly, and she would not let go. And I think her poor little body, she was always a little girl. I just think it gave out. I sort of thought about God as distant. And I woke up one morning, it was actually Christmas morning. We had been to Christmas Eve services the night before, and I prayed during that service. I prayed to know, send me a sign, let me know. And I woke up the next day on Christmas morning, and it was just clear as a bell to me. And the analogy in my mind was the GPS system. And I thought, here we have a global positioning system that man created. And that system manages to track billions and billions and billions of moving people and things. If man can do that, then God can do that. And it was just resolved in my mind that, of course, I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That revelation has saved me. It saved me through Lori's illness and death. It saved me through cancer. It saved me.
As 2009 drew to a close, Carly, in 1 year, had experienced enough turmoil for a lifetime.
In that instance, the last thing she wanted to do was leave family, friends, in a period of true mourning and come back and try to get on track again.
That's Carly. There's a cancer diagnosis that ends up getting more complicated, and what distracts her from it is meeting with different people to talk about a Senate campaign.
Well, as a Republican running for the Senate in California, maybe one of the few times I questioned her sanity.
And her ordeal was not over. With just days left in the campaign, Carly's recovery suffered another setback.
She checked into the hospital and was there 2 days, really in tough shape. And, word gets out, of course, she's in the hospital, which is almost, it's a serious blow right before people are going to vote.
The last couple of days of her campaign, she campaigned with drains taped to her and was really not very well.
You're out a day and you're hitting the campaign trail. It's so grueling. The doctors give you any special, request or advice?
Well, of course they said try and take it easy, which is impossible.
Carly had been through a grueling year of making speeches, nearly bald from chemotherapy. Now, in the last moments of her campaign, she ripped the drainage ducts out of her chest before going on stage. I had to go speak to my supporters. I would be damned if I was going to do it with those pieces of plastic inside my body. Carly had beaten cancer, but the high turnout of entrenched Democrats in LA County got the better of her plans for Senate.
When I first started this campaign about a year ago, almost a year ago exactly, as a matter of fact, when some of you may remember I was bald, I have a little more hair now, our country was founded on a truly radical idea. The idea that everyone has potential.
Instead of hard charging straight back into the political arena, Carly expanded her efforts in helping those less fortunate.
When it comes to poverty in the third world, women aren't the problem, they're the solution. Joining us here, Carly Fiorina, former senatorial candidate and CEO.
She had begun a foundation called the One Woman Initiative in conjunction with Condoleezza Rice at the State Department.
I'd also like to thank the co-chairs for this event who are joining us. Carly Fiorina, thank you very much for being here.
Carly was originally global ambassador for Opportunity International. Opportunity International sees the poor not for their liabilities that they have to fix, but for the assets they have in relation to their community and the relevance they have and what they can do with just a bit of support.
We focused on supporting grassroots women's organizations in very challenged parts of the world where women don't have access to justice, where they don't have access to leadership training of any kind.
Opportunity International is an organization that not only has its heart in the right place, but is building a systemic, sustainable solution to the world's poverty.
To those of us that know her, everybody counts. She doesn't disregard anyone. I mean, she doesn't forget for a moment her humble beginnings and the road that she traveled.
Cindy Halberlin is the former president of another nonprofit close to Carly's heart, Good 360.
There was nothing she wouldn't do. She spent a huge amount of time sitting down with us and helping us with strategy. I mean, she got in the car with me and would drive to places and meet with high-level executives and pitch the organization. It was unbelievable.
Good 360 takes excess or obsolete or unsold inventory from companies. And instead of that being destroyed or ending up in a landfill, we distribute it to 45,000 charities in this country and others around the world.
Carly's leadership in Good 360 has, in essence, transformed the way we do business.
We've become a healthier, more vibrant organization. As we all like to say, and we got it from Carly, we've lifted off.
The passion was clear from day one. The honesty of purpose was clear on day one on wanting to make a difference and do good.
She's really been incredible in forging relationships with people.
We took a visit. It was an incredible experience. There were about 31 young children, many of whom are very ill, some of them who are fighting for their lives. One little girl who was under 4 said she wanted ballet classes, and this little girl could not leave the hospital because of the risks for infection. And so they took our donations from Home Depot and they built her a little ballet studio.
I work with the facilities team. Allie is one of our little girls. She's 2.5, 3 years old, I think, and just sweetheart. She's a little sweetheart. We have a dance floor that Al and I put together, got busy and put the floor down, and then we went and got some pipe and built a rail. Went on YouTube to find out how to build a rail, how high to make it, and all that kind of stuff, and we just put it all together.
And then Carly got to go with this little girl, Allie, and to the dance studio, and Carly stood with this tiny little person on the ballet bar who taught Carly how to dance. She would do a few steps, and Carly would do a few steps. It was wonderful to watch.
It's just amazing. When I walked in here and saw her dancing the first time, it just touches your heart.
I think sometimes as Republicans, we tend to talk about our policies. And we talk about our policies because we know our policies work better. We know the facts are on our side. It's just that sometimes when you talk about policy, it doesn't land in somebody's life.
That little girl who once doubted her gifts has devoted her life in helping others unlock their potential. Today, she runs for President of the United States, a citizen bringing America back. Citizen Carly.
Let me tell you about Carly Fiorina. I remember sitting in a board meeting with her. She literally sat down at a laptop, took off her jacket, and just started typing. She said, "Hey fellas, remember I used to be a secretary." What I realized about her, she was just the real deal.
Frank has always known that Carly was going to make a difference in a very big way in this world. And so here she goes.
Her family has faced these struggles. She's faced these struggles with her business career, and she's faced these struggles trying to speak truth to California, which takes real bravery.
This is a lady who Forbes and Fortune had labeled one of the most influential business people and females in the business community.
Going through her cancer, going through the death of a daughter, which people never really recover from, they now have perspective. And I don't think you get perspective unless you've actually lived through some of the wonderful highs and you've lived through some of the awful lows.
She's not an old suit, if you would. Here we go again, here's the same cast and crew. No, this is a new, fresh face with a plan to make America fresh again.
It's not like what you see today in politics. People are being rewarded for failure and punished for success. It should be you work hard for it, you should earn it. There's no question in my mind that Carly Fiorina will earn everything that she gets, and she has in the past, and she will in the future.
She's got a lot of that moxie and fearlessness, and it comes from a sense of resiliency that you need to lead.
She doesn't strike me as a politician. A politician sort of has an end game. They're going to slide to this position, to that position. That's not Carly.
Telling the truth is an option to be used or not to be used as necessary by Hillary. Telling the truth is the core principle of Carly Fiorina.
I believe that running this country is one of the largest businesses in the world. It's time we put a business person in there to run a business.
It is important to remember that ours was intended to be a citizen government. That is what by, for, and of the people means. When did we get used to the fact that only a professional political class could run for office? The truth is the professional political class, those protectors of the status quo, they have let the citizens of this great nation down.
And I think what's unique about her is just her experience dealing with real life problems, both here and in her dealings around the globe.
I know King Abdullah of Jordan, and I applauded King Abdullah's leadership when his response to the beheading of a Jordanian pilot was to immediately execute 2 convicted terrorists and begin bombing. Here are 4 very specific things we can do, we should do, and we must do to push back on Vladimir Putin. And number 1, we should rebuild the 6th Fleet. Number 2, we should rebuild the missile defense program. Number 3, we should conduct aggressive, regular military exercises in the Baltic states. And number 4, we should arm the Ukrainians. Vladimir Putin would get the message.
What we have here, we have a person that wants to see America run differently, run it like a business, be a compassionate business leader.
I believe that she can make a difference, and she's extremely qualified to do so. She's got strong fiscal management. She has led large organizations. She understands bureaucracies. Carly's always been about, how do I make a difference and change the world? I think she will put everything she's got, every fiber of her body will go into trying to make a difference for the people that live in this country.
And she's actually created jobs and lived within a budget and worked to make America stronger.
If she can reach the people, she can win this. People like me, the gearheads, the boat guys, the car guys, the race guys, the construction workers, the guys that wear a name on their shirt. Quit complaining and go vote. You can make a difference.
America is the most extraordinary nation in all of human history and on the face of the planet, because this is the only nation ever in history and anywhere in the world that was founded on the same belief that my mother taught me when I was a little girl. Are we going to be, once again, a nation of limitless possibility? Are we going to be a nation where every American, regardless of their circumstances, believes their lives are defined by possibilities? Citizens need to decide if we're going to take our government back.